It was a crisp autumn evening when the first cracks in my reality began to surface. My wife, Claire, had told me she was spending the night out with friends, leaving me alone with a bottle of wine and an old movie to fill the quiet. 7 years of marriage had made us familiar with each other's habits, routines, and subtle tells. But something about that night felt off. Her voice over the phone had been unusually bright, her laughter ringing a little too sharp, too rehearsed. I dismissed it, telling myself not to overanalyze. Then, just after midnight, she walked through the door, giggling like a teenager sneaking in past curfew. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly tousled, and clinging to her was the unmistakable scent of another man's cologne. My stomach knotted, but I forced a smile, pretending nothing was amiss. Claire collapsed onto the couch, kicking off her heels with an easy grin. "You're in a good mood," I remarked, setting my glass aside. She beamed. "Yeah, it was a great night. The girls and I had such a fun time. Nothing crazy, just drinks and laughs." Her voice was too light, too giddy. I nodded, studying her. Glad to hear it. As the night stretched on, I noticed how she avoided my eyes, fingers gripping her phone as if it were a lifeline. Suspicion curled in my gut, but I held my tongue. Confrontation wasn't my style, at least not yet. Instead, I watched, waited. After all, trust was the foundation of our marriage, or so I had believed. The next morning, Claire was unusually cheerful, humming to herself as she prepared breakfast. Her phone vibrated repeatedly, yet she made no move to check it. When she stepped out of the room, I hesitated only for a moment before reaching for it, my pulse hammering in my ears. We had always shared passcodes, one of those small, unspoken gestures of trust that now felt like a cruel joke. The messages confirmed my worst fears. "Last night was incredible, R. I can still feel your touch." A dizzying blur overtook my vision as I scrolled through the flood of texts from someone saved as M. Then, the pictures. Claire in a dimly lit hotel room, drink in hand, laughing as she leaned into a man I didn't recognize. The breath left my lungs. Betrayal slammed into me, raw and unrelenting. My hands trembled as I placed the phone back where I found it, forcing myself to remain composed. Rage would come later. First, I needed clarity. A plan. Claire waltzed back into the kitchen, oblivious. She kissed my cheek, handed me a plate of eggs, and flashed the same radiant smile she always had. How could she? How could she pretend everything was normal after what she had done? Over the following days, I became a silent observer in my own home, watching, listening, uncovering every sordid detail of her deception. The affair hadn't been a one-time mistake. No, it had been unfolding for months, stealing time I had once believed was ours alone. Anger simmered beneath my skin, but I kept it buried. Instead of confronting her, I gathered evidence, screenshots of texts, saved photos, even receipts she carelessly left behind. Slowly, methodically, I constructed my case. And then I devised my plan. On the surface, I remained the same devoted husband. I cooked her favorite meals, laughed at her jokes, even suggested a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Claire seemed relieved, as if my sudden attentiveness had absolved her of guilt. Little did she know, I was setting the stage for her downfall. The trip was my masterpiece. I booked a secluded mountain cabin, picturesque and peaceful. Claire was ecstatic, gushing about how much she needed the escape. I packed our bags carefully, ensuring that everything was in place, including the hammer, a new hobby I had told her. She had no idea. She never questioned it when I took up photography. That first night at the cabin was picture-perfect, on the surface, at least. We sipped wine by the fire, reminisced about our early years, and even danced under the starlit sky. But while Claire reveled in nostalgia, my thoughts were elsewhere, locked onto the final steps of my plan. The next morning, I suggested she sleep in while I went out to capture some scenic shots. She murmured her agreement, burrowing deeper into the blankets as I grabbed my gear and stepped outside. But I wasn't photographing landscapes. Instead, I carefully positioned cameras throughout the cabin, ensuring I had every angle covered, the proof I needed. When Claire finally woke, I proposed a hike, claiming I'd found a breathtaking spot nearby. She hesitated, but eventually agreed. We spent hours wandering the trails, and for a fleeting moment, I almost forgot the truth. Almost. Back at the cabin, her phone vibrated constantly. She glanced at the screen, irritation flashing across her face. "Work stuff," she muttered, dismissing the messages. I knew better. That evening, I cooked her favorite meal, refilling her wine glass each time it neared empty. She laughed freely, blissfully unaware of the storm I was about to unleash. When she excused herself to use the bathroom, I seized the opportunity. Snatching her phone from the counter, I typed a single message to him. "Let's end this." Then, I erased the conversation, leaving no trace. By the time we returned home, Claire was back to her usual self, her laughter filling the house. But then, she reached into her purse, and her face went pale. Frantically, she rummaged through it, panic growing with each passing second. "Where is it?" she whispered, her voice shaky. I feigned concern. "What's wrong?" "My wedding ring," she said, eyes brimming with tears. "Oh no," I murmured, my voice thick with mock sympathy. "When was the last time you had it?" She looked at me, guilt and desperation warring in her expression. I don't know. I must have taken it off somewhere." Of course, she had no idea that I had hidden it myself. The ring, a symbol of our marriage, was now nothing more than a tool in my revenge. The next day, I set everything in motion. I had assembled a file, meticulously curated, filled with undeniable proof of her infidelity. Screenshots of messages, photos, receipts she had carelessly left behind. Every betrayal, documented in excruciating detail. I left it on the kitchen table, knowing she'd find it. When she did, all color drained from her face. Her voice trembled. What is this?" "The truth," I said, my tone devoid of warmth. "The truth you've been hiding from me for months." She opened her mouth to explain, to justify, but I raised a hand, cutting her off. "I don't want your excuses, Claire. I want you to leave." Tears streaked down her cheeks. "Please, we can fix this. I'll do anything." "It's too late." My voice was cold, final. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I had already spoken to a lawyer, ensuring the divorce would be swift and entirely in my favor. The evidence I had gathered guaranteed I would keep everything, the house, the car, even the savings. Claire never saw it coming. As she packed her bags, sobbing, I felt nothing. No regret. No second thoughts. She had shattered our marriage, our trust. This wasn't cruelty, it was justice. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. Claire, on the other hand, unraveled. He had abandoned her, disappearing the moment things got complicated. Our mutual friends distanced themselves, siding with me once they knew the truth. She lost everything. One evening, I sat on the porch, whiskey in hand, reflecting on the months that had passed. The pain of betrayal lingered, a dull ache in my chest. But there was something else now, something stronger. Satisfaction. I had reclaimed my life. I had taken back control. Claire's laughter no longer haunted me. It had been replaced by my own. A laughter born not of vengeance, but of freedom.